Do you ever get bothered watching knife reviews on YouTube and the knife reviewer obviously pronounces something wrong? How's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. And this is the Spyderco Shaman. Not the shaman, not the shaman, the shaman. And today I'm going to prove it. It's pronounced shaman. Like this.
Let's start with an example for American English.
In the US, we say shaman.
So, interesting fact, shaman is how it's pronounced in the UK. We're not in the UK. This knife was not made by a UK company. And the people that pronounce it as shaman aren't in the UK either. So, it's shaman. I know. I should have saved this till the end. This is the biggest nugget of information that you could have gotten from this, right? Wrong. And I know that there are certain popular YouTubers out there that like to say, you know what, it is what it is because I say it is.
I've decided to call it shaman. Not shaman, not shaman, shaman. I know everybody's got their own way of saying that. I'm calling it the shaman.
Surprisingly, this episode is not about that. I just wanted to get that out of the way. You see, I've already got a Spyderco Manix 2, a Spyderco Para 3, a Paramilitary 2, a Spyderco Smock, a Spyderco Yojimbo 2. It only made sense that I get one of these. This is the Blade Ops exclusive in LMAX. Now, I love LMAX. LMAX is actually one of my favorite steels. Now, some people might say, yeah, but it's not as good as M390. Well, you know, that's just a matter of opinion because while M390 has better edge retention properties, it's a little bit harder to sharpen and it's not nearly as tough. So you lose a little bit of the edge retention, which is still really good. You gain some toughness and it's easier to sharpen. What's not to love about LMAX? LMAX is a super steel through and through, and it's one that I am really excited to get on the Shaman. The Shaman is a knife that many people, myself included, have avoided because they're like, well, you know, I already got a Manix 2 or I already got a Paramilitary 2. What do I need the Shaman for? Well, hold on to your horses. The Shaman is a little bit different. And today, I've only had this for about 10 hours. This came in yesterday. So that means that we get the opportunity to not only do a first impressions, but do a direct comparison against its brethren. Let's check out the Spyderco Shaman. All right, so it's time that we get started talking about the Spyderco Shaman. And before we get going, I just want to say, for all of you super fanboys and girls out there who think that I'm calling out your favorite YouTuber, I'm not. I like to have fun. I like to joke around. So if you're offended, you could, leave a comment if you please, but just know that there's no ill will or drama between me or anybody else in the knife community. And it's sad that I have to mention that, but some people really are drawn to the drama. I'm not. I just, again, like to have fun. I'm here for the sharp and the shiny. And I'm excited to talk about this one because I have more than a few Spydercos. And in fact, my very first most popular video was about a Spyderco Para 3, and I love talking about them. I've since tried to diversify to offer people more content, more context, but I knew it was only a matter of time before I got sucked back in and got a Spyderco. So this one is fun because it's not just the regular, stock and trade S30V Black G10 Shaman. This one is the Blade Ops exclusive, which has LMAX steel. And here's the deal. For those of you who aren't aware of the difference between a exclusive and a sprint run is made available to all retailers, and it's just very limited. An exclusive is only made available to a specific retailer, and it's also kind of limited. So this one is exclusive to Blade Ops. You cannot pick this up at Blade HQ. You cannot pick this up at Knife Center. But I do like this one the best because of the steel specifically. Now, in case this is the first time you've watched a video on a shaman, I'm going to go ahead and magically make the specs appear on the screen. Check it out. And you know what? If you want to continue staring at that, feel free to pause the video. But the most important thing is that if you're watching this, chances are you're also considering other Spyderco knives. Maybe you're considering a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Maybe you're considering a Spyderco Manix 2. Maybe you're considering a Spyderco Para 3. And just to give you some context, I've got them all here. I also have a Spyderco Yojimbo 2, although for some reason I just don't think that this one is as comparable as the others. We'll put that right there for now. But yeah, so let's talk about this. It's kind of a big boy, and it is different than the others. As you can see, it's definitely bigger than the Spyderco Para 3. The Para 3 is more of a EDC pocket type of knife. And so, you know, boiling this down even further, you could probably say it's more comparable to the Paramilitary 2 and the Manix 2. Now, it's got a way different blade shape than the Paramilitary 2. The Paramilitary 2 is got this straight backed pelican type face, and yeah, it's super iconic. No one can ever argue against the Paramilitary 2. They're an amazing knife to have in the collection. And as far as the Manix 2, I would actually venture to say that the blade shape on the Manix 2 is a bit closer, and the blade profile is a bit closer to the Shaman. Now let's talk about size in the pocket. As you can see, it's extremely close to that of a Paramilitary 2, maybe a tiny bit thicker with these chamfered and rounded off scales. They both use G10, but the difference, as you can tell, is especially on the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, you get a grippy G10, whereas on the Shaman, you get this rounded, polished out G10. And it's a different aesthetic. It adds depth, and it's more comfortable. I have to say it. I mean, whether you're looking at a Manix 2 or a Para 3 or a Paramilitary 2, they do these slab construction handle scales, and you know, they fit their purpose. They fit well in the pocket. You know, they're not uncomfortable by any stretch, but they are grippy. That is what I will say is that whatever you miss out on, you know, scale wise on a Paramilitary 2, as far as the contouring on the handle scale goes, or lack thereof, it makes up for it in grip. Whereas these being polished, these don't have, they don't have grip. You're going to get about the same amount of grip as you would out of, you know, bead blasted titanium, which is to say, you know, your grip's going to have to come from your fingers. So that is something worth mentioning. Now, where they're all very similar is how they do a front finger cutout. As you can see, they all have this nubbin here at the top, and then this jimping on the underside of the blade spine, or the tang of the blade, and so that allows for really good index finger level grip. And it's the same between the Para 3, the Paramilitary 2, the Manix 2, so on and so forth. Everything, in fact, except for the Yojimbo 2, which, yeah, there's no front finger cut out there. So we're just gonna go ahead and, you know, put this guy over here to the side. As far as comparisons purpose goes, it's much easier to compare a Manix 2 to a Spyderco Shaman. The Shaman has a blade that is wider for longer, and it is a bit bigger. You get more blade out of a Shaman. The Manix 2, of course, is designed by Eric Glesser, and the Shaman is, of course, designed by Sal Glesser. So you've got father, and then you've got son. And so a common question people might ask is, well, which one should I get? You know what? It's really going to come down to personal preference in the end. And we'll probably do that comparison in another video. But I just wanted to kind of show that so that, you know, people have something to reference. As I can blurt out specs all day long, but, you know, really seeing it up against other Spydercos offers a heck of a lot of context, so that's definitely important. As far as everything else goes, I will say this satin finish blade is a fingerprint magnet. So, you know, if you like to keep everything nice and polished off, this is probably not going to do it for you. I'm rather impressed by these contoured handle scales because it definitely lends to a nice comfortable grip in the hand, whether you're choked up or not, and you get plenty of jimping here on the back. You get jimping on other models as well, but because of the more traditional style design on the spine of this blade being more of a true drop point, it actually feels good. You're not wedging your finger up against something. Your thumb in a saber grip rests right against the back. You could tell this was designed to be a user, and people are really fond of this knife. In fact, if you were to look for it right now, usually the only ones that you can find available, if you can even find the regular stock and trade available, is going to be S30V with a full serrated blade. And I understand, some people love full serrated, but not most people, and definitely not me. I prefer a plain edge. I'm not cutting rope all day, and therefore a plain edge is going to suit my needs better than a serrated edge, and I also think that it looks better. It's easier to sharpen and maintain, and if it gets dull, I can actually sharpen it without needing to get out, you know, special sharpening rods and whatnot. So yeah, I prefer the plain edge blade, and most everyone else does as well. There are a few outliers. I'm just throwing that out there. Now, just like with a lot of the other Spyderco models, not only can you switch between tip down and tip up carry, you can also switch it to a left-handed carry if you'd like. And, you know, same thing on this side, you can also make it tip down or tip up, whatever your preference might be. The liners on here are inset, and it is using the Spyderco compression lock, which is my favorite lock from Spyderco. It's not as solid as something like the ball bearing lock, but it's a lot easier to actuate. Now, something that I really am not a huge fan of is this little nubbin right here, because you see when you close this thing, if you don't move your index finger out of the way, it will bump your index finger. I have seen a lot of modifications where people will actually grind that nubbin down because they just get tired of it running into their finger. And I know that they're capable of doing that, because if you look at the Spyderco Para 3, oh, look at that. There's no nubbin getting in the way of your finger. So, you know, easier actuation on the Spyderco Para 3. So that's definitely something that I wish that they would eventually just get rid of altogether. I don't need that nubbin there. Yes, I understand that it's there so that you have something for your index finger to stop against, but you have all this jimping right here, and you don't really need it. I would love to grind that off, but you know, for the sake of leaving this as original as possible, I guess it'll just have to stay. And it's not a huge deal having to just move my finger out of the way, although it does mean that I'm relying on that action to go ahead and, you know, get the blade to snap back into place. As far as the detent is concerned, the detent is not an issue at all. And in fact, if you want to see at what point this gets sucked in by the detent, it's right about there. It's nice and clicky, and it is running on phosphor bronze washers. Now, some people prefer the hydraulic action of phosphor bronze, some people don't. For me, I definitely don't mind it on my Spydercos. I wouldn't mind some slicker action, you know, maybe some bearings at some point. Come on, Spyderco, get with the times, man. But it's kind of what you just come to expect when you hold a Spyderco in your hand. And speaking of what you come to expect, yes, the magical and ever frustrating Spyderco pocket clip. And it seems like every time I do a Spyderco video, someone loves to point out that they like the Spyderco pocket clip, and you know, good for them. I'm not personally a fan, and I'm going to be looking forward to updating this clip to be something more like this MXG deep carry clip. I actually really like this design. This one specifically won't fit on here, and you'll notice that the difference is that on a traditional Spyderco clip, you get these three, you know, but on this one's more like the clip on a Tenacious. So yeah, you got the lanyard hole going through the top of the clip, and your carry out of the pocket's going to be about like that. So I mean, it's not a huge deal if you don't mind having, you know, pocket. If you don't mind having the scales sticking out of your pocket, it's fine. As far as the ergonomics, the clip does get in the way of the ergonomics. I actually do feel that clip here in the center of my hand, which is not terrible, to be honest, but if I'm spending my time thinking about how the clip feels in my hand and not on what I'm doing while holding a sharp object, that's not necessarily the greatest of things. Now, these handle scales I don't have a problem with, but I would definitely be interested in upgrading that to titanium. Yes, it's a big knife. Yes, it'll boost the weight upwards of, 6-7 ounces, but I don't really care. I have a feeling that because these are slick anyways, you're not losing anything by moving to metal handle scales, but it might actually just improve that relationship between the phosphor bronze washers and the blade and the scales, just like it has for my Spyderco Para 3 and my Spyderco Yojimbo 2, which definitely gives it a slicker feeling action. And that's just my opinion, but I might be looking to do that in the future. I'm also still looking at modifying my Spyderco smock, so we'll have to see how well that goes. Now, something that I have noticed is just how much of this blade you have sticking out here at the top, and I have tried this. Turns out, if you try on this, you can indeed front flick this. It's not the premier way of fidgeting with it, and it's definitely not what it's intended for, but you can if you want to. And at the end of the day, do what you want, because it's your money, it's your knife, do what you want. All in all, it definitely has the same Spyderco vibes, but it's like Spyderco, but more realistic. This is a knife that feels good in all grips. Reverse grip, yeah. Saber grip, definitely. Back grip, absolutely. Choked up grip, yeah. It's just, ergonomically speaking, this might be the best Spyderco that I've held so far from stock. And that's saying something, considering I really, really like the ergonomics on the Para 3. I think the ergonomics on the Para 3 are amazing for a slab style handle scale construction. And on this Shaman, I'm actually just really enjoying this. This seems like something that I could really get behind, and I'm not mad at that. I really enjoy the fact that I can bear down on this blade, and that at the end of the day, it's something that's comfortable and natural in the hand. That's cool. It doesn't matter who you are. That's cool. You get the traditional Spidey hole right here, and of course you can do, your Spidey drops and whatnot. This is really, really easy to index, and that's going to make it something that's familiar to your hand right out of the gates. I like Spyderco. Spyderco does a phenomenal job on their pocket knives. They're probably my favorite overall production company just for overall quality, and on this one it's no different. You definitely feel the quality. It feels familiar. I've never held a Shaman before, but here I am, and I feel very comfortable using and fidgeting with this one. Is it the most fidget friendly knife that I've ever tried? Definitely not. But there is something to be said for having a knife that you actually do want to carry. And so for those reasons, I'm rather excited to eventually rank this one and also do more comparisons for it down the road against knives like the Spyderco Manix 2, which is another great offering from Spyderco. So with all that being said, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Do you have a Shaman? Is it something that you could see yourself getting? If you are watching this video and you haven't bought one yet, why not? Let me know in the comments section down below. Guys, that's all I got for you. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, boo-hoo, there's a button for you too. And if you want to be notified when the Grail or Garbage ranking for this knife comes out, make sure you hit subscribe. I'm Rollshambo. I'll catch you on the flip side.